ladies and gentlemen. It's one and only Dog Waters, Dogman Weekend. We're going to have a quick conversation about some of the things that I've discussed in part across different platforms as it pertains to cryptids. But this is going to be specifically as it pertains to Dogman. And these are my thoughts after all these years being in this field of Dogman on the spirituality and the spiritual nature of this cryptid that people call Dogman. As you guys know, I've been doing this since 2015, so we're 7 years into this. And the more time I spend in this, the more witnesses I talk to, you get to a point to where you start to notice these interactions. And so I'm going to differentiate between eyewitnesses and members of the audience that listen to content. All right, so when an eyewitness has an encounter with Dogman, there's a process that they go through. That process is a process of fear, a process of awakening and coming to understand that there is more out there than what they believe to be out there. And they go through this cycle, and it mirrors, a Dogman encounter mirrors in a lot of senses a spiritual encounter with God. But it's an inversion of it, and I'll explain that to you more in a second. But so you have the eyewitness. Then from the actual audience standpoint, it's a slippery slope for audience members as well, because you have your casual listener who listens to content and they're like, "Oh, those Dogmen are crazy," but they're going about their business, right? Then you have the listener who's a little bit deeper. They kind of want to know more about it and know more about the topic. Then you have the listener who goes even deeper and they call themselves a researcher, a web researcher, and they start researching the topic. And at some point in time, somewhere in that web research kind of arena, people become totally obsessed with the topic of Dogman. So I want to talk to those of you who become obsessed with it. First of all, nobody's probably ever told you you're obsessed with it. And I want to do my best to help you understand what's going on. Now, somebody may sit there and say, "Well, DW, I like the content, but I'm not obsessed with the content." If you recall, I said years ago, "Hey guys, don't listen to my content while you sleep at night, because you don't need to be having that stuff going into your subconscious mind." So that's one of the ways you know that you've gone, you crossed the Rubicon with this, is if you're laying there in the middle of the night listening to Dogman encounters when you go to sleep. And quite frankly, if you listen to scary, creepypasta or anything like that when you go to sleep, then you need to do an evaluation. Look at yourself in the mirror and say to yourself, "Self, what are we doing out here in these streets?" I could be listening to ocean waves. I could be listening to ceiling fans running or box fans running to go to sleep if I need noise. I shouldn't be dependent on anybody's voice to be putting me to sleep as it pertains to Dogman. But nonetheless, I want you to do an evaluation and look at yourself and say, "Okay, what the hell do I have going on right here?" All right? That's one of the signs that you've gone too far. And I'm giving you these things based on witnesses that I've talked to and people who come to me for help because they found themselves being totally infatuated with this. Now, another way to know if you've gone too far is if you're a member of an audience and you find yourself attacking other people about Dogman. Not your favorite YouTuber going out and defending, just to pick a name, like let's say Josh Turner has a beef with somebody, right? And you're defending Josh. That's one thing. That's your favorite YouTuber. I mean, you're a part of his audience. You may be contributing money, blah, blah, blah. So you have a vested interest in a person. And that's understandable, right? When your interest is so vested into a cryptid that you find yourself arguing points about a cryptid, let me rephrase this, arguing points about a monster, then I need you to reevaluate where you are and where you stand, because you're in a very, very dangerous spot. Spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, you're in a very, very dangerous spot. Now, nobody talks about this, I guess, because people don't want to discourage you from listening. I'm not telling you not to listen. What I'm telling you is be conscious of where you are in this process. Because here's what happens to those people who go way too far. Those are the same people that contact me and say, hey, I want to have an encounter and I want to get some coordinates and I want to go there. Some of those people go and they come back and they experience what they wanted to experience, and their life is never the same. Some people have gone, I've never heard back from them. Truthfully, never heard anything back from them. Some people have gone, found what they were looking for. The stress was so much that they went back home and it damaged their relationship. Some people have gone with their wives because it was a family idea, and then their wives have gotten possessed because there's more out there in the woods than just Dogman and Bigfoot. There's these elements that go to this that nobody really talks about. Field researchers will talk about it if they are a really excellent field researcher. One of the things that we saw when Vault was out in the field doing the Dogman Cams thing, he went out in the field one time, and I never forget, he came back, had nosebleeds, had headaches, had to sleep for like a day and a half. What happened to him while he was out there? What did he get hit with? What did he get zapped with? What went on? Now, there was other crazy things going on around that time period that I'm not at liberty to say because that's not my business to talk about. But nonetheless, you need to understand that there's a spiritual element to this as well. And so when you go out and you obsess over something and you give it an inordinate amount of attention, you are worshiping it. Look up the definition of worship, and I'm using the textbook definition of worship. And so as a worshiper, you come in agreement with whatever spirit represents that entity. We don't know what that is at this point in time. Honestly, I've been trying to figure it out for the longest. I've been talking about it for the longest, but we're not sure what that is. So I'm giving you an opportunity to think about this outside of the box and say, okay, maybe I need to put some brakes on this and evaluate where I am. All right? That's the first thing. Now I'm going to go into and make my argument and my case for what I'm explaining to you right now. Take a look at this. All right, from a worship and reverence standpoint, here's what I want you guys to understand. And this is from an eyewitness encounter standpoint. Someone who witnessed it out in the woods or out on their property. These are some of the common themes that are just repetitive with every witness that I talk to. So they don't want to make eye contact with these things. And when they do make eye contact, direct eye contact with it, it growls to the point to where it forces them not to look it in the eye, right? Some of the gestures that have gotten people out of encounters with Dogman have been bowing their heads in reverence. Like, okay, look, I'm sorry, I'm bowing my head like you're dominant. Even speaking and professing out of your mouth that this thing is dominant and that you are afraid of it has worked because you're acknowledging its dominance over you. Another thing that's happened to many people who've been out in the woods, that have been hunting and ran into Dogman, leaving it a sacrifice, but this is a normal sacrifice is something that you give of yourself willingly, right? In this case, it forces you to leave that game as a sacrifice. You shoot a deer, you go into the area, it's in the tree looking down at you, or it's already taking your deer, but it's in the tree looking down at you, looking at you, looking at the deer, looking at you, looking at the deer, giving you the idea, the concept, the notion that, hey, that's mine. So it forces you to make that sacrifice to it. Now, one thing that's different from Dogman, that's different than Bigfoot, is they don't have altars. They don't stack rocks in the woods like Bigfoot does. Bigfoot does build altars in the woods, and any real researcher who's encountered a Bigfoot in an area where they live and you repeatedly visit that area, you hear those people saying, yeah, they stack these rocks and I do gifting. Well, no, what you're doing is you're making an offering or a sacrifice. And if you listen to the terminology I'm using, you will understand the truth of what goes on with this and what's really behind this. Now, this is the most significant thing. When it comes to Dogman, there are literally chosen people who they allow to get close. Kurt Stokes was one of the chosen people that was, or Kurt Stokes is, I'm talking like Kurt is not here, he's still around somewhere. Kurt Stokes was one of the chosen field researchers that would go in and actually interact with these things at will. I think he took a lot of his videos down, but if you looked at Kurt Stokes' old Dogman videos, I mean, he caught him on camera over and over and over and over and over again. He went in there and came back out, and Kirk is still alive, right? There's other people that go into Dogman areas and they're run out, chased out, and don't come out. So they have certain people that they like and they don't like. So they have chosen people that they will interact with. What does that sound like to you? Giving reverence, forced sacrifice, chosen people. Just think about it for a moment. What does that sound like to you? All right, if that ain't make the case for what's going on, I'll go to the next one. Watch this. And this is all pulled from data. This is why having data about encounters is really, really important. Watch this. Let's talk about the fear that people experience when they're in the presence of Dogman, right? So any type of spiritual presence that people have when they have a spiritual encounter, whether it be with God or whether it be with something evil, there's certain things that you know are spiritual. For example, when you pray to God, you can feel the presence of God without seeing him, right? You can literally feel his presence come upon you. That presence in a lot of times manifests as cold chills or hair standing up on your arms. They call it the spirit of truth, right? When you're in the presence of God, you understand that you're experiencing something way more powerful, way bigger than you, on a level that is interacting with you spiritually, right? Now, go back to what Dogman witnesses proclaim. They can feel the presence in the woods without seeing it. When they actually, whether they see it or not, both of these happen when they can see it, and sometimes when they see it, sometimes when they don't. They get cold chills, the hair stands up on their arms, their emotions become heightened. The same thing that happens when you have an experience with God, you become emotionally heightened. And even in both senses, most of the times you're brought to tears. There's been Dogman witnesses. They even go to tears. They even go to tears live on interviews, right? And there's so much fear that they're brought into tears or brought to crying. The other thing that Dogman witnesses from their encounter, during their encounter, even after their encounter, they have a keen awareness that they're in the presence of a dominant force, something that totally dominates them. There's nothing they can do. They're screwed, right? But it's all in a negative connotation. So you got a godly experience, which is all in a positive connotation. You got the juxtaposition, which is this Dogman encounter, but they're all the experiences and the emotions parallel themselves, but it's an inversion. So I want you guys to, this is not going to be long, but I want you guys to just really sit back and think about what I'm laying out for you here. Because in the Dogman community, there's this flesh and blood argument versus this spiritual being argument versus this interdimensional being versus all the rest of this. Now, I remember years ago, this is what I was talking about. I had not quite articulated it yet. But if you understand these things, it really, really pulls out of all the clamoring and all the talking and all the chitter chatter. You really start to pull out very important things that for you can protect you and for you gives you true enlightenment as to what you're dealing with. Because part of deception is working and dealing and living and participating in something and not being fully aware of what you're doing. So now this is information to help you really understand the true spiritual aspect of what happens and what people deal with. This is not going into the poltergeist activity that people have at their houses after they had a Dogman encounter, similar to what happens to Bigfoot witnesses when they have a Bigfoot encounter. This is just simply based on what eyewitnesses have expressed across the board, across channels, as it pertains to their encounters. These are all common things. You can turn on Vic Cundip's Dogman Encounters channel right now, and I guarantee you can listen to whatever video Vic put out Friday. It's going to hit a lot of these points. You can go to Josh's Turner's channel and go listen to him talk about a person's Dogman encounter. You go back months and listen, and it's going to hit all these points. It's just nobody's taking the time to actually compile it and present it in a format, in a manner in which it's easily digestible. So with that being said, guys, now that you have this information, what actually do you think this is? And what do you think is going on when people encounter these things in the woods? That is the question. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm going to let you come to that conclusion yourself. Because at the end of the day, we all need to come to our own conclusions. But I'm going to present you with evidence so you can see what's there. Some people are going to agree, some people are going to disagree. That's a part of the conversation. but I'm presenting you with the evidence that I have, and I'll continue to do it this way, so you can make up your mind.